Been moved and seconded. Discussion on those. Seeing no discussion, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Monthly reports are all caught up and in. We have no public hearings this evening. We'll start with our guest, and our first guest. This is requesting streamline approval for an IT computer service-based business at 1832 Penfield Road.
Steve?
Mr. Costello. And I'll let you take it from there. And I'm assuming this is
I'm
Steve.
Yes.
Welcome,
Hello.
Steve.
Steve, why don't you give the board a little idea of what you'd like to do? The board did get a letter from Cheryl.
Okay.
Just talk a little bit about the scope of the business, the number of people working there.
Okay. CMIT Solutions of Monroe is an IT company that provides service for smaller organizations that don't have their own IT staff. All of our clients are businesses themselves, and we generally do work out of the client site or remotely for them. The first floor of the building would act as the office for us, and the second floor would act as an apartment still. We do not have any traffic to the office normally. We may occasionally have meetings or something of that nature, but there is no storefront operations for us.
And for the record, what is the building? 1832?
It's the building next to the fire hall, just to the west of the fire hall.
The green building?
Yes, that's right.
There's a half a dozen of us.
And you'll all be there at the same time?
In fact, we hardly ever are all there at the same time. We can do our work from wherever we are, so we're either at a client site, working remotely, or in the office. The biggest occasion for us to get there is when we have our monthly meetings.
Yes. Sounds good.
So, Steve, you talk about hours of operation Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, and any weekends, nights?
Typical, I looked at our last 12 months, and less than 1% of our business was done on off hours. So generally not during off hours. We like it better that way, and our clients like it better that way too.
Means everything's working properly, right?
Right.
So there's adequate parking for...
There's a small lot in the back that fits 4 or 5 cars.
It fits 4 cars. They would be in front of each other, I believe. And you've got parking on the street just
Yes.
in front of the building.
As well.
There are 13 parking spaces in front of the building.
But these are by appointment, where you make appointments.
Absolutely.
It's not like walk-ins.
And, you know, by appointment, maybe once in a month, someone might stop by.
Yeah.
So on a day-to-day basis, how many people would actually be in the building at any given time?
Let me say typically 2.
And you have signage, drawing a picture of signage for it?
I imagine we would eventually, but because we're not trying to attract people in to the
Right.
front of it,
Nothing
you know,
flashy.
that would just be us advertising ourselves.
And Kaz, regarding streamline, just for the record, what is currently there now in terms of streamlining one, or at least a prior business?
What is there now, I think, is a professional masseuse, physical therapist. Prior to that was a real estate office,
Mistake.
Pace Realty.
And so no changes inside, no structural changes, no putting...
We may move walls left or right to get spaces to have private office, meeting room.
Would you paint it or anything?
If inside...
I mean outside,
No,
any kind of exterior,
has not been described to me.
yeah.
I don't see that a good reason that we would...
No, it was a couple of people ago, a couple of owners ago that kind of fixed it up and, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't look bad. I just wondered,
Right.
sometimes the new owner would like to
Yes.
do
yes.
some kind of improvements to
Yes.
make it their own.
So the business is owned by Cheryl Neal, and I'm her, I'll say, right-hand person. I run the
Okay.
technical operations.
Okay.
And when would you be looking to start operations there?
I believe we are looking at a December kind of a changeover. We have an existing arrangement where our office is, and we would need time to get set up and move out of there.
I would offer that this fits within the parameters of our streamlining process that this board has set up. Certainly the streamlining process is designed in order for businesses like this to get in, move in ready, kind of plug in, low intensive use, not some major changes both inside and outside in the building. And this is exactly what the streamline process is for, to help businesses come in, get going, bringing employees into Penfield and be good neighbors in Penfield, and that's why this town has embraced that time and time again. And we have businesses such as yourself and other businesses that come in and take advantage of that, which is a good thing. So,
That's your motion?
right,
I'll second it.
I would propose that we move forward with the streamlined process for this particular business.
Okay. Is there a second to that
I
motion?
second it, yeah.
Okay. Further discussion? We'll ask Mr. Costello to prepare his usual letter of approval. They'll talk about getting a permit for any sign that goes up. They'll talk about any remodeling that is done that may require a permit. It'll essentially memorialize the discussion we had here this evening, and you'll have that for the files overall. All right, further discussion, questions by board? Anything, Mr. Costello, that didn't get added to the record you believe is pertinent
Just
to
covering
this?
what you just stated, one thing I would like to look at is the landscaping that's out in front of the building has not been good over the last couple of years. We probably want to look at that as well.
Okay. That would be in your letter?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Then I'll ask the applicant any additional questions that you might have of the board as it relates to this particular matter.
I think it's been outlined to us. I think we're clear. We'll be happy to hear from you and go from there.
Okay, excellent. A motion and second on the table. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So good luck
Thank
moving
you.
from one Penfield location to another Penfield location. All right, have a great evening. Thank you very much. This brings us to our second item on the agenda. This is for discussion regarding a possible bed and breakfast at 1883 Penfield Road. Welcome.
Well, hi everybody.
Hi.
I'm glad to be here. I'm Deb Lindenau, and you folks all look lovely tonight. Thank you. I do have I know that I had emailed a copy of my business plan, but I do have a hard copy. Would anybody like a wonderful binded hard copy?
I've got a wonderful print copy, so thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. So it is my intent to open the beautiful Strawberry Castle as the area's next most luxurious bed and breakfast and event venue. So just recently undergoing a $250,000 of renovations, there'll be very little for me to actually go into to begin my business. Have you had the pleasure of going and touring Strawberry Castle in the past?
I have.
Yeah? All right, so you know the charm and just simply how beautiful and inspiring it is. And that's what made me fall in love with it in the first place. I've become very good friends with the Dragos over the years. And their love for the property and how much true TLC they put into it is truly inspiring. And I do intend to just keep up the integrity of the property and utilize it back to its original charm of being a bed and breakfast. With the events, there would be events vary. So we can either utilize the back lawn area. According to the Dragos, they did have events up to 250 people. I wouldn't expect anything that large. I probably wouldn't want anything that large on my property. And those would all be strictly for the weekends during the peak season, and that's May through October. You're really looking on just Saturday nights. The next area on the property that would be used for events would be the new garage area that could fit about 30 to 50 individuals, and that can be used really throughout year round for winter events, or if in case of an outdoor complete rainout, they can always go indoors. And that would be a great use of that space as well. Having beautiful intimate dinner parties inside the extremely charming dining room, and utilizing the library and the living room as well could accommodate 5 to 10 guests. And then I would be looking for full property rentals. That would primarily be for those weekend events, for the weddings. You have the bride and groom in the master suite. They can have their best man and one of the bridesmaids in the other suite. I guess they could always also have their parents in the suites next to one, but I'm not sure if they want that. But completely up to them. I would have a customized breakfast each morning for my guests. I've traveled Europe and I really love the French breakfast, so it's going to be French, yet farm to table inspired. Because there's only 3 rooms, so you can guesstimate probably minimum in-house would be 3 guests. I'll be able to customize each breakfast based on dietary restrictions. So suppose I have a huge big carnivore, go ahead. I will make them all the bacon and sausage in the world. If I have a vegan, I have plenty of protein vegan options. What's going to have this venue, this bed and breakfast and event venue stand out from the rest is that there are sleeping accommodations on premise for the event venue. That's a huge thing that'll stand out. It is a historic landmark that's already very well known throughout the area. Each guest will receive a glass of strawberries and champagne upon their arrival. They'll be toured the property and shown to their rooms and given all the amenities that they request, because that is the luxury, beautiful service that I am expecting to give. There will be afternoon tea every day. There will be an evening social of locally sourced beers and wines Monday through Friday, and always freshly baked cookies before bedtime, because who doesn't want a fresh baked cookie on vacation? My background is in hospitality and hotels. I started out in New York City boutique hotels, and this is where I learned a lot of my skills and my services. And that's what I plan to bring the area to help promote tourism. Let's say the president comes to Rochester. He knows he's going to have to stay at Strawberry Castle because it is the best place to stay right here in Penfield. The congressmen and what have you, they'll all know they have to stay here at Strawberry Castle in Penfield, New York.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Is your plan to live at the site?
Yes, yes. My residence will be in my office area. Yes, that's where I will be sleeping and living.
So that you're aware that property is zoned residential,
Yes.
single-family residential. So the bed and breakfast component certainly fits within that and part of our ordinance. What you're planning kind of goes above and beyond. So I'd like to hear some words around how that fits in with the residential character of the neighborhood.
Oh yes, absolutely. The residents, the neighbors will certainly have an absolute, I'm a great neighbor, have an open invitation to come in and enjoy my facilities as well. I have an open house policy, no matter if I have a residence that I'm living in by myself or a residence that I have, my guest staying in. And I'll definitely have community and local events too. So it's not just big corporate events or holiday events or what have you. I'll be able to open it up for town events too, to include the entire town within my property and be a great neighbor.
So folks that live in residential areas from time to time know and understand that there may be a family gathering or an event there. Typically that's a once or twice during the course of a year, not potentially 30 or more events during the course of the year. Disrupting different events at private residence and things like that. So how do you address that aspect of that?
Oh, absolutely. I do not look to be a nuisance within the area, not at all. I don't intend for any of the events to cause any sort of ruckus. Again, I will be living on the property, so I do not want any hooligans on the property causing a ruckus until 2 a.m. That's not going to happen. There'll be strict rules and policies in these contracted groups to say when you need to be out, when an event can start, how loud how loud something could be, and what is allowed. So I'll have very strict rules for what can and cannot happen. Because again, it is going to be my home, and I am not going to disrupt the peace of the neighborhood, not at all.
Deborah, this was a very thorough submission here, and I appreciate that. I don't know if I've received one this thorough. So one of the questions I have is, in your business plan, you sort of project revenues and startup costs. How much of that is sort of predicated on having the events, the weddings, the parties, the corporate events? How much of that business plan is generated on that, or is most of it on the bed and breakfast aspect?
The room rentals for the bed and breakfast will really take care of the monthly operating costs. So it's the events that will be really it'll be primarily heavier on events, because the events it will be the aspect in which will bring me a living.
Yeah.
No, and that makes sense. I mean, that was my assumption there, and So I think, part of the residential character is, on the opposite side of that is the 4-lane road right out front. And so I have concerns on parking and sort of management of logistics on site. So if you could please just share with me what your thoughts are with where people will park, whether it's on-site, off-site, how you're going to manage sort of the logistics of an event.
Oh, absolutely. So again, speaking with the Dragos, they did indicate for when they had those 250 plus guest events that they would park the cars. They would park the cars like in the back lawn. They would park them in the front lawn. I'll be honest, I'm not totally keen on that because I just feel like that'll cause a lot of clutter, especially and a lot of kind of disarray coming from the road, and I can definitely see that. I would definitely be looking for a valet company to come in and bring into a alternative parking lot, which is something that I will definitely look into and want to do. But that's why I'm not expecting for events to go past a certain guest list because I do not want that. I don't want that sort of mess with traffic.
Right.
I do not want any issues with that, just for my own guests and their happiness and the neighbors and the area. I don't want to cause that.
For the events that were there previously,
Yes.
For those that lived in the neighborhood or just lived in town for how long they have, that was sort of an annual thing. It was sort of, we knew it was coming.
They put a big
and
banner out.
It was a
everybody
banner,
knew.
Yeah.
we knew it was coming,
It was
so.
not for profit. It was, they were entertaining.
Right, and so they parked on the, and it was one of those things like Tony had mentioned, it was, every year there's neighborhood residents that have large parties and you just know when it is, and, but we're talking, according to your
Saturday.
plan, like every Saturday or 30 out of the 52 weekends a year.
Yes.
And so, again, there's no, I'm trying to envision a parking lot. There's no parking lot that I can think of in the area where you're going to have, where valets are going to be running. I'm trying to understand a little bit more how you're going to manage the running across either Woodside Drive or 441 in all traffic, in all hours, in all weather. Having those cars coming in and out, whether you're going to need a second ingress or egress or even want one off of Woodside. Coming off of the one access point right now on 441 is going to be problematic at best when you have all of those cars. So I'm trying to, again, just understand how it's not going to be disruptive to the residents on Woodside or other residents. Also, how is it going to be safe for all of the attendees and the other 36,000 cars a day that drive by Strawberry Castle. So, and if you don't, if you need to work a little bit more on sort of logistics and find some other partners and how it would work, I'm okay with that, but right now I haven't heard anything that makes me comfortable with sort of how you're going to handle the on-site logistics, whether or not there is a tent or a party. I just don't know how you're going to handle 125 cars, 30 weekends out of the year.
There is the possibility that if it won't work with bringing having a ton of cars, we could arrange for different shuttle services. So if everybody parks in an alternative parking lot and we use an actual shuttle service, so it's just one shuttle to bring the guests to and from, we can, that's absolutely a possibility. And I think that's a very, very good alternative, especially if you have guests coming in from out of town. They're likely they're not driving to the venue. They're taking the hotel shuttle to the venue. So I would really very much entertain the idea of shuttle service from a different location over to the Strawberry Castle. That will avoid any sort of traffic issues. And just all the noise, clutter, all the issues it'll avoid.
So let's say hypothetically, under that scenario, maybe you'd have a half dozen to a dozen cars on site max. Maybe one or two of the guests, yours, maybe staff. Let's talk about, with the events comes catering.
Yes.
And so again, when you have sort of all of the, I would assume that for large scale events, you're gonna have to have off-site caterers come in and staff to then manage the event. So where would you, same question.
Yes.
Where would you have sort of if you had an event for 200 people, how many staff would you need? How many trucks would you need? What kind of layout would you, I mean, is all this going to be in the back, sort of where the old pool was in the back, or are you
Yes, yeah.
looking at having things wrap around the large sort of corner lawn as well?
I would be primarily right in the back area. If they decide that they would have to obviously run it through me to have something in that side area, but I'm not planning to have any sort of distractions for drivers on that side. That's what I would be worrying about, having it on that part of the lawn. So yes, everything would be right in the back. But as far as having any sort of caterers and whatnot, I would really hope that would be done before guests come along. So we wouldn't have any issues with them being there and then having guests guests arriving at the same time. I would just ensure that those schedules are exactly timed, so we don't have to worry about any sort of issues with having any event trucks there, and then having some extra cars. And I just know I won't let that happen.
Okay.
So that's just something that I can see and understand that is a concern. But again, with the scheduling and everything, I won't have to worry about it.
So for an event of maybe 200 people, how many staff, in your experience?
Oh, sure.
How many staff?
I'd
20,
say
30, 15?
you'd have a server per 20.
Okay.
So that's serving staff, and then you think of like chefs and whatnot. So you just say 3 or 4 cooking stations, a couple bartenders, and then 1 server per 20.
Okay. And you answered my next question, which was going to be alcohol service. So obviously that will be part of the environment. Would you require a full liquor license then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. On property though, I would only prefer to have beer and wine on premise. I'm
Even
not
for
looking to
events?
have
Even for the large scale events?
for large. It's depending if the actual catering company themselves, if they have the appropriate licenses.
Right.
So it's all that's up to them. But what we're willing to have are beer and wine. I'm not looking for a huge party. I'm not looking for any wild crazy parties. No, we're having beautiful, elegant, sophisticated events.
And then just last question, Paul. The hours for the events generally would end, I guess, what time would they start normally and what time would they end?
Oh, absolutely. So if somebody who wants to do maybe a daytime event, I would say between the hours of maybe 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. If it's something in the evening time, say they want to have a ceremony, absolutely, you can start at 2. You can start at 2 o'clock, but everybody has to be packed up, gone, goodbye by 10 p.m. Again,
Regardless of event, 10 o'clock?
It's 10 o'clock. It is my house too.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we talked about, kind of visual. You're in the 4 corners. We generally do not permit live outdoor music in the 4 corners.
Okay.
So you would not be having any live music then, I assume.
So like a DJ is okay, but an actual band is not okay?
We only have permitted acoustic music,
Limited acoustic.
limited acoustic music.
Okay. If I have to do that, that's that would be fine. If that's what we are only permitted to do, that's what we're permitted to do. Would that be the same as in the garage area as well, or just the strictly outdoors?
I think the sensitivity is that in the 4 Corners district, you are surrounded by residences.
Mm-hmm.
And to be consistent, I would submit that you would not get a special exception to anything but a couple guitars.
Couple guitars, okay.
No
amplification.
amplification.
All right. You gotta know that, like Dragos had that party and they'd have a band, but that was once a year.
Yeah.
That was done. But still, I mean, neighbors, where I live, where Tony lived, you could hear it. You could always hear it.
Yeah.
And but people are prepared for it. If you're doing it every Saturday night during the summer, the neighbors are not going to appreciate that. That's just beyond acceptance. And you're working as a business now, so then it falls into what Paul is saying is, you know, acoustic is what is permitted for the businesses when they want to have outdoor entertainment. So, I just want to be clear,
Oh,
because I know
absolutely.
you're talking to Dragos, and it's a different situation.
Oh, yeah. So would that be putting limitations on pretty much the lawn events? Would that be, but suppose like the garage, like any like smaller events in the garage along with the events inside of the home? Would that have any sort of other particular restrictions, or are those kind of good to go?
It would be the impact to the neighborhood. I mean, again, you know, as I started this conversation off, you're surrounded by single-family residents, and single-family residents, again, they understand and respect. Everyone probably does it once or twice a year where they have family over, birthday celebrations, different events. But a steady diet every weekend or most every weekend, that's going to be a problem. So if this board were to look favorably on the bed and breakfast and no other events, what would you say to that?
Just 0 events, not even events within the home, and nothing?
It would be, you know, part of the bed and breakfast, so it, you know, you'd operate it as a bed and breakfast, and not have events of 50, 150 people. It would be a bed and breakfast.
Well, I would really hope to even try to use the garage area for those smaller, even like the 30 to 50, just to even have that option. But for the, you know, smaller, more quaint events that I can have inside the home, those would be very profitable for me as well. But as long as I can still have the steady income from those smaller events, that'll also very much suffice. But I would.
So if you were able to operate a bed and breakfast only, period, no other events,
And that would only really be supporting my my monthly expenses for renting
it
out
would
just
fit
guest
within a
rooms.
residential, what the zoning code calls for within a single-family residence. So bed and breakfasts is a permitted use. But if there were no other events that were allowed there other than the bed and breakfast consistent with the ordinance, what kind of problems would that create?
It would just be, if there were no other,
Right. Operated as a bed and breakfast, period.
just problems, like, for me personally, problems. It would, I would love what I did because I love what I do. In hospitality, I create happiness and memories for a living. So I'll still be living out my dream of being able to offer amazing service for these guests of mine. But as for really building up this business and being able to truly serve and give back to the community, I think the events can truly give back to the community, and and that'll negatively affect myself as well if I can't do any true
You talk
community
about business,
relations.
and again, I'll go back to the fact that it's zone residential.
Absolutely.
So you keep going back to business. And within the residential, bed and breakfast is permitted, it is allowed. And if this board were to look favorably bed and breakfast only, could you accept that? And I'm prepared to give you 2 weeks to think about it. And maybe take a look at some other things that have been discussed, tonight. But again, it is a residential area. The character is residential. It's not business in that area. And again, I get the fact that you're looking to take a very beautiful building and to showcase that building. But there are many residents around that facility, across the street, on either side, behind, that this board has to be sensitive to as well.
Absolutely. Yes,
And
absolutely.
so, if we concentrate on business, and not residential, then we're not doing the proper service to the residents in that neighborhood.
Yeah, my concern is we have to be true to the ordinance. We have to be true to what what that's zoned for.
Yeah.
And the fact that, not all municipalities allow a bed and breakfast within a residential neighborhood, but our ordinance does provide for that. And I think it's certainly reasonable to anticipate that a bed and breakfast would be proposed for the Strawberry Castle. But beyond that, I think your challenge is the ordinance, really, and the location where it is. Where location's great, but at the same time, it also is probably a hindrance too.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Supervisor, I would propose that we table this for the next work session. I think, as you pointed out, in fairness to the applicant, we've proposed some questions that she may not quite be ready to give an answer to, and I respect that. I mean, it's some decisions, and maybe she can have some conversations with Mr. Costello in the meantime, as to what she thinks that she could do if she was to purchase that property, given what this board has talked about today, and what Councilman Quinn had to say about concerns with parking. I share his concerns with parking. In the past, obviously, the current owner has had a party once a year, maybe twice a year. It's kind of been promoted in the community or the neighborhood, so people knew on that particular Friday or Saturday night there was going to be a party, but it was not a common occurrence, whatever that common occurrence is, whether it's twice a month or whatever, or on Thursday nights, things like that. And so it does, I think, create a little bit of a change in what past use of the property has been. Certainly the bed and breakfast, I would support that all day long. I commend you for that. As Councilman Quinn said, you put together a great presentation, great sales pitch. I could only hope that more applicants did as thorough a job as you did, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
My concern is the parking. I mean, once or twice a year, okay, that's what's happening. It's not that big of a deal. But the parking can get out of control for larger events, and I am not convinced that that's really in the best interest of that property or the best interest of the neighborhood, given 441, given the lack of parking for larger events, and really what the zoning has to say about use of that property. A little bit more flexible on inside the building than I am outside the building. And if you came back in 2 weeks with however you run your business and said the bed and breakfast is good to go, I think this board would be very supportive of that, because it is a beautiful building, and I give you all the credit in the world for identifying that and recognizing that and wanting to maintain that. It's a wonderful asset for the town of Penfield. I am not comfortable with the large-scale use on a consistent basis that has not been done in the past. And so I would offer that we table it for 2 weeks for the next work session, maybe allow the applicant some time to take a look at a couple different things, maybe have a couple conversations with Mr. Costello, and then we can readdress it then, being that this is the first time that we've met the applicant and talked to the applicant about what her vision is and what her business plan may be for that particular property.
Yeah, I would suggest too, you kind of look at it in increments, because it is taking, you're biting off a lot here, even though you've got great experience, it sounds like. So perhaps take a look at some options incrementally, like, okay, what would you do if it was just a bed and breakfast, and kind of set up that plan. And then you've mentioned the garage idea, which is very intriguing to me. So show me what, or show us, or think about what would be if you had, okay, the bed and breakfast and events inside the garage. So kind of, incrementally think about it, and maybe as Councilman Morris had talked to Jim about, what would be required parking-wise, kind of take a look at it one chunk at a time, and perhaps even talk to Jim about the possibility of bed and breakfast where then you apply for a permit, 3 times a year for an event, or something along those lines. That might be a little bit less ambitious. And we do have businesses often who we do say, kind of don't bite off more than you can chew, and come back to us for, when you want to do something more. And that seems to be more setting you up for success than having you kind of take off too much in the beginning. So I would suggest if you can kind of walk her through maybe some different options and then come back to us, because then we might be able to more clearly see what would be the best fit in that neighborhood.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. With regard to the garage, I think a lot of that has to do with the state building code as well.
Okay.
They may have to do things to that garage that, to allow for a public assembly in that garage that, may not be worth the effort, depending on the situation.
So I think that's a good point, and that might be a discussion where you bring the fire marshal or our building code folks as part of that discussion.
Yes. Two comments. Number one, this is for the viewing public more than anybody else. I want them to understand that you're not approving anything here. This is just simply a discussion to determine whether or not she should even make an application.
That is correct.
Secondly, the current bed and breakfast ordinance was ironically designed to accommodate that particular property.
That's right.
Many, many years ago, the owner was a single-family residence, couldn't take care of it by himself without some ability to earn some income. We did design that bed and breakfast ordinance to accommodate that, to be able to supplement additional income to preserve the house. So that was the whole intent of the bed and breakfast, and it really was a confining type ordinance to ensure that it did not impact the adjacent properties around it.
I would also just encourage you not to buy the property until you understand what you can do with the property.
Oh, absolutely.
So that you don't get yourself in a position that you don't want to be in.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's why I'm also here now. I wouldn't buy a property if I don't know what I can do with it.
Right.
Well, that's you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
I could
You'd be
imagine.
surprised by how
That,
many people sit there and don't do that, so.
Okay. So, Mr. Moore, I think you suggested tabling. Would you make that a motion to table?
I'd like to motion to table.
Okay. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Quinn. So it'll next be on the agenda for our first meeting in November, which
13th?
will be the 13th. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so that was a motion to table for 2 weeks. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our third guest. This is for discussion regarding possible coin shop at 1807 Penfield Road. Mr. Costello.
Yes, Mr. Omluck, right?
Michael Malak.
Welcome.
And Mike came to see me recently. He would like to talk to the board about taking over the space previously operated by Mark Carrera's nationwide insurance agency. And I'm going to let you talk to the board about the scale and size of the business and what your intent is.
Michael, we did receive a copy of your letter that Jim forwarded, that you highlighted the information, what you're looking at or thinking about. So we do at least have that. If you want to just take off and kind of highlight in more detail what you're looking to do.
Well, let's see, where can I start? I'm a little bit nervous, but I've owned and operated Ridge Coin at the corner of Ridge and Culver in Arundecoit for the last 45 years. About 7 years ago, I got sick. And I was kind of forced to stop what I was doing, and I turned over the operation to some other people. I leased the business and the building. I own the building in Arundecoit, and I turned it over to them. I never expected to go back into the business. I was given very little chance to survive 2 years. But 2 years came and went, and the upstairs of the building has 2 apartments, and I turned one of them into an office. And what I was doing was selling my inventory, 45-year accumulation of inventory. I was selling it on eBay and Craigslist for the last 5 years upstairs. No retail trade, just selling. frankly, what's happened after 45 years of commuting from, first, I lived in Fairport and then Penfield, and commuting 590, 490, 104. I'm so sick of that.
Yeah.
So I told my wife that I said, I'd like to just work out of one of the spare bedrooms and just, you know, set up my computer station and stuff like that. That wasn't gonna happen.
So you're looking for a place to continue that now?
I'm sorry?
You're looking for a place to continue that
Yes,
spare room business?
I would, believe it or not, I have an unbelievable amount of inventory still to get liquidated. And this gives me something to do, and it gives me a steady source of income. I could make a couple of phone calls and get rid of everything if I was willing to sell things 10 cents on a dollar, you know, but this keeps me going. And so then my second option was to find something closer to home. Now, we live right off Penfield Road, and this location is 4 minutes from my house. It's perfect. My intention is to run it as an office for myself, but frankly, I want to take the opportunity of you know, letting walk-ins come in, and if there's some business that's generated by my location, I'd like to take advantage of that. But my hours are going to be stated as walk-ins are welcome when the office is open, otherwise by appointment only by calling this number. I usually like to start around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. I like to be done by 3 or 4. And in the summer, I spend a lot of time on my boat. In the wintertime, we do a lot of traveling. So I don't want to have steady hours. I don't want to upset customers that expect me to be there. And so my hours are going to be.
Okay.
Is it just coins? I'm not familiar with Ridge Coin. Is that all you deal with their coins, or is there jewelry? Is there stamps? Is there
When I was running it, it was coins, stamps, and scrap gold that people are, you know, no longer wanted. We'd buy scrap gold by the weight. When these guys took over, they kind of expanded it into a pawn shop and kind of thing, which is, you know, not my cup of tea. And so what I intend to do here is strictly liquidate my coins and stamps, and anything that comes in, you know, I would just flip it. I'm not going to have any showcases. I'm not going to have any displays of anything for sale. I'm having a remodeling done, or plan on having it done, where there's going to be a wall opening 6 by 3 feet with a countertop, and then people can sit in front of me. We can deal face to face, and, you know, with chairs. Again, we're not looking to turn it into a retail operation.
So it's more of a place for you to operate your business, not really a destination or to attract people off the street or anything like that?
Correct. But if somebody comes in, my intention is to have a sign in the window saying, you know, Ridge Coin. Take advantage of my reputation
keep
and
the
name that's been out there for 46 years. And
That doesn't confuse it with the other one? Is that-
I'm sorry.
The other one, the one that you,
They're staying there. Their lease is going to be up next August, and I don't intend to renew the lease. I'm going to sell the building, and you know, one of the options would be that I could move back there in the Runaway, but frankly, I don't want to do that. I don't want to commute, and I don't want to be attached to the reputation that they've developed now.
Are they operating as Ridge Coin as well, or something?
Their name is supposed to be Ridge Coin and Gold.
Okay.
I let them use a play of names off my name, you know, just to make it look like a continuity of the building, of the business. So that's going to be tricky. I'm not sure they're going to like me using Ridge Coin, but I am Ridge Coin. I started it, and I never gave that up to them. I never sold them the name. They call themselves Ridge Coin, much as I did, even though the official name was Ridge Coin and Stamp Exchange. It was always easier just to say Ridge Coin, and it takes up less space in the signs. So,
Might get more clientele than you want by using that name. They might think they're going to something bigger than what it is to advertise. No? I don't think so?
You know, I don't think they'll make that connection because those guys are advertising at the corner of Ridge and Culver and our Henrietta location. They've expanded.
Will you have a website too?
Do I? No, I do not.
Okay.
No.
Oh, that would be
No, I
confusing.
just, I sell on eBay. I've been on eBay for 20 years. And I've mentioned Mr. Costello. I've got, I don't know if you guys are familiar with eBay, but I've got 17,800 positive feedbacks.
Wow,
No negatives,
yeah.
no neutrals.
What would you do for signage? Would you have a sign up there saying Ridge Coin?
Yeah,
Like
they have
rare
he has a big
insurance?
window, it's 4 by 3, I believe, and I'd like to have a neon sign, Ridge Coin, in the window. And also, he has a standing sign by the sidewalk with a business upstairs and a business in back. That's, I believe it's 12 inches by 36 inches. And so,
You'd be part of the directory sign.
I'm sorry,
You'd be part of the directory sign
Yes.
they have there.
yes.
Michael, what's the square footage of that area?
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit hard of hearing.
Not a problem. What is the square footage of the area that you'd be looking to take?
950 square feet.
And you indicated just minor remodeling that you might do, but that's it.
The only thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up that opening so that I'll be on the other side of a closed room. It's a separate room, and there's gonna be a couple of chairs in front of this counter, and I'll be on the other side. And, you know, it's for somebody that wants to bring their coins for appraisal and or for sale. And as I said, I'm not displaying any coins. There's no
Will you be keeping
showcases.
your inventory there?
I'll have my inventory in the
So
bag.
is there gonna be any security you're going to need to put in there?
I will have security. I have a safe, and I will have an alarm system. Same as I have now in my other office.
Any additional employees?
No, just myself. Just myself.
Michael, when were you looking to start that operation at that location?
I'm going to Florida for a month, so I'll be back December 5th. And I was hoping that the contractor would be able to do that remodeling for me by then. And then when I come back, I suppose it'll probably take me a couple of weeks to move my equipment, my desk, my computers, set up my alarms. Probably by the end of December, I'd like to be able to move in and say that that's my office.
I have no concerns with I have no concerns with what you proposed. I'd make a motion that we grant the request.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll ask, is there any additional comments, input from the board to Michael? I'd ask Michael, any questions that you might have of this board
I
at
can't
this
think
time?
of any.
I recognize Mr. Costello. Is there anything additional that you'd like to add to the record that has not already been added to the record this evening?
My only comment is that it certainly is a different operation than what we experienced just down the street last year.
Right.
That is a full retail operation. So that being the case, my normal thought would be that you'd hold a public hearing for a similar situation. This truly isn't a similar situation though, and
It's more like an internet business kind
it
of
probably lends
office.
itself to a streamlined process.
I'd support
Can
that.
point to think.
I think so.
Speaking of similarities and non-similarities, I'd be interested in seeing what the sign's gonna look like. Because neon sign is usually, are there any other,
Neon signs are permitted
Yeah.
within the district. They have to be inside the building.
Right.
There can't be any blinking. You see a lot of open signs, and that some of them are blinking. We're contacting people constantly about stopping the blinking. The key is how big it's going to be, and how much it stands out, that kind of thing. So certainly we would have the sign maker give us dimensions and all that business for you to look at,
Thank you.
as well as a freestanding sign.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so moving to the second. Anything else, Mr. Costello?
No, we probably want to have the fire marshal just go through that. That building has been occupied for a long, long time, just to see if it meets state code and all that business.
Okay. So that would be part of the recommendations and comments in the letter that you would prepare, in addition to things like signage and building permit if needed, necessary, anything like that, and then also review by the fire marshal's office. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter is approved. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you
Enjoy
very
your
much.
time in Florida. Bring back some nice weather.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to action items, and the first item is a conditional use permit for a hair salon at 1782 Penfield Road. We did hear that matter last Wednesday, and said the next opportunity to discuss that was this evening. And I'll ask Mr. Costello, since the public hearing, has any additional information materials been received?
No, but the only thing I wanted to clarify with the board and with the applicant is the applicant did get permission to install a sign on the adjacent properties Liberty Street site. And my question to you is it going to be in the same location as their sign, or are you going to the north on the other side of the driveway?
The north side of the driveway.
Okay, so there will be some separation between the two, and we just have to place it with you to make sure that it's not in the right of way,
Yes.
and that it's on his property and not the adjacent property owner's
Yes.
property. Other than that, I didn't really have anything else standing.
No, that was fine.
Okay, public hearing was held last Wednesday. I think the board went through and discussed all aspects of the application, from inner remodeling, I think some minor plumbing that was going to be done. Talked about the sign, and it sounds like we've clarified the location of the sign now on the north side of the driveway. And we discussed hours of operation. We talked about employees. I think the board covered all of the items. I would just ask, board, do you have any additional questions for the applicant at this time?
Nope.
I propose we move forward with the request, as was stated at the hearing, and with additional discussion today, now that we've clarified the sign placement. I certainly support the request to start up the business.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'm not seeing any additional comments from the board. I'll ask the applicant any questions the applicant might have of the board at this time.
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Costello?
Just one last comment regarding the sign. We do need it, I think your husband said he was going to make the sign.
Yes.
We just need to have a dimension of the sign and some other things for the permit. We'll go over when the time comes, but I do need the dimensions of the sign, what it's going to look like.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Costello?
Nope.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, there's been a motion and a second on the table to approve this matter, subject to a number of items, one being making sure any permits that are necessary needed for remodeling, the sign aspect and getting the dimensions for that, and making sure that that's within town code, town ordinance, and the location to be, out of the right of way, and so Mr. Costello will work with you on that. And then any other items, including the fire marshal walkthrough and things like that. So those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter carries and approved. Congratulations. We look forward to you getting the building up and operating.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your
And just so you
time.
understand, the board will be putting the resolution in for the approval for next week.
Next week.
That's right. It'll be before the official resolution of approval before our legislative
I'm
session.
sure that's right. Yeah, there's 5 weeks this month, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, we have a seasonal tent installation, K2 Brewery, 1221 Empire Boulevard, and welcome to those that are here. And would just ask Mr. Costello, since our last meeting, is there any additional information that has come in? You had a couple of assignments, if you will, to
I did.
look at and follow up.
We were able to go out to Hank Parker's to look at various types and designs of tents. I took the fire marshal with me so that he was assured that it met all the fire safety requirements, which, you know, the one they're proposing does. Good to see you.
How you doing?
They also pulled out some heating units because we were concerned about the heating units. The fire marshal was fully supportive of the heating units that were proposed. So the actual, you know, as far as the staff was concerned, the actual structure itself wasn't so much an issue. The heating was not an issue. I think really the big concern that the staff, the PRC had, was the fact that they are very popular, rightfully so. They do a great job. The question's going to be, if the tent goes up and it does provide the same kind of services in the wintertime that you provide in the summer, you're still going to have a lot more people coming. With the snow issues and plowing and all that business, right now they're utilizing their green space as parking when they need it, and that's fine. But as you get into the winter, you're not going to normally be able to drive through 2 feet of snow to park in certain areas that you've been able to park in the summertime. And again, with Wilbur Tract Road being Wilbur Tract Road, it's not the widest road in the world. The staff is concerned about how to handle traffic during those winter months if you're going to bring more people there than you normally would have because of the weather condition and now the tent. So that's kind of where we are with
Yeah,
it
and
right
snow
now.
removal tends to shorten
Yeah.
Take
the
up.
parking area, yeah.
May I address that, please?
Absolutely.
We've already discussed it with our man who comes and plows. He did a very good job last year, and he does use our property to put it up on the banks, not down by the road, but in our part of the different areas in the parking. We don't lose very much parking during that time, just because we have the parking down the road. So we don't have much loss in parking. And it does decrease quite a bit people do not come out in the wintertime, even with a tent. People are not going to come out in the wintertime like they do in the summer. We get a lot of families during the summer, and they're just not going to be coming out like that in the wintertime.
Who plows that road during the winter months?
Well, the road itself is plowed by Steve Kernan out back. He does most of the plowing, but we hired David Cavetti, I believe is how you say his last name. He plows our parking area, he plows the entrance coming in, and then plows down that road for whatever we need. But then Steve is the one who comes back and pushes back on the road and stuff. He's one of the residents out back, Steve is.
Right, Steve is, right.
Have there been parking issues?
There has not been any. We use parking attendants every day.
Okay, as far as overflow parking, when the lot's full, where do people park?
We turn them away. We tell them they can go down. We were told by one of the gentlemen who handles the parks down here, he said to send them down to Lucian Park, so that's where we send them.
And they walk up?
Whichever means, whether they walk up or most of the time somebody drops them off and then they go down there and park. You know, we've encouraged a lot of our patrons to Uber. We've offered them drink chips and different things if they Uber in. So we're hoping that a lot of them will
It's a
continue
smart
to.
thing to do. I like
Yeah,
that.
it really is, Uber in and out. So, you know, we're more than happy to work with our customers that
In
way.
fairness to you, I've only received one complaint this year on parking, and it's the same complaint I had at the same time last year, which had nothing to do with the brewery. It had to do with a race that's conducted in the
This-
park.
Do you know what I did this year? I literally stood at the entrance of K2 and I turned them away. If they were there for the race, I told them they could not park there. Some still, I'm sure, got through, but I turned away at least 100 cars that day. Because
yeah.
we got in trouble for it the year before.
Right.
So I stood out there for hours turning everybody away because they weren't there for us. So I literally stood there and turned almost 100 cars away that day.
Your sons didn't stand there with you?
Couple of them were, the two of them were out there at different times, but they know mom's the one that usually is the enforcer, so I don't hesitate to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't do this.
So you do have people out patrolling the road to make sure the Wilbur track remains open on a regular basis?
All the time.
I think, look, I think this entire board is extremely happy that the business is doing well.
Thank you.
But the success of the business has caused some issues. And the parking issue just does not seem to be getting better.
We are making progress on that.
And that's where I was going.
So
is-
we've been working with a real estate agent, and I'd rather not give names
That's
all the way
fine,
around.
that's fine.
But we've been working with one, and we're in the process of working on 2 different offers.
Are you close to getting
We
an
hope so.
agreement? All right,
We think so.
okay.
I know that they have talked with
He has
Jim?
been to see me, yeah.
And so we've discussed many different options. We're trying to make sure that we make the best decision all the way around, so.
Because I'm only one board member, but I would be much more comfortable, getting on board with the tent facility based on my conversations with town staff going and looking at this type of, this type of temporary structure with the heating units, knowing that the parking issue has been resolved, even if it's a short term, for a year or whatever, particularly through the winter.
We are looking for a permanent
Yeah,
solution.
okay, good. I mean, because
You
that
want to be able
is,
to accommodate more.
Absolutely. Well, as they had mentioned in the beginning, they're looking to open up their upstairs. I mean, they've got a 5-year plan. That's not something that's going to happen this year or next.
Right.
But they are looking to, continue to develop the area, so. And we know that the property behind us is probably not going to be an option, so we realize that all of that is very short-term. So we're hoping that everything, I can't give you an answer today,
Yeah,
but
I
things are in
understand.
the works, and we're
They're
hoping,
good challenges to have, certainly. I mean,
Yes.
So if this,
as long as you're patient with us, they're good challenges. If you're not, then they're not
They're
good
a good
challenges.
indication of how their business is.
so if this board were to table this again this evening, the next opportunity for discussion would be November 13th. Would that be realistic to have a better, clearer decision or idea of where you're heading?
No, not for parking. That would not get, I can't tell you whether, when they do negotiations in real estate, that can take a day or it could take a month. It depends on how
Or it could
quickly
take a
the other
year.
party is willing to
Sure.
participate
Yeah, we
and respond.
understand
We've gotten response, we've gotten numbers. We're just waiting to see what's going to happen. But
Sure.
that really, for what it's going to do, because if you don't allow us to put the tent structure up, and I have a gentleman, Craig from Hank Parker's, in case you had more questions
Yeah,
about
Thanks,
the
Craig.
tents,
Thanks.
because I didn't want, last time I felt like I was not prepared to answer your questions about the tent.
Understand.
So that's why he's here with me. But in regards to parking, we really do not have the same number of people in the wintertime as it is literally about half in the wintertime that you get instead of during the summertime. But we do have our anniversary party coming up. So even if we can't get the tent, we still need to go for the 2 to 3
For the- I
week
was gonna
permission
say.
to be able to do it, which would take us, into December anyways. So all I'm saying is that for January, my sons also say, is this going to really make a difference? My only hope is that we're going to be able to service the community the way we have. There's been a lot of fundraisers and a lot of things that the community of Penfield, and that's where we support, is the community of Penfield, have come to us and asked to do different fundraisers. We would have to turn most of those away up until next summer, and we don't want to do that, but we don't also want to ever get to a point to where we would feel we'd be at max capacity.
Right.
So that's why we're trying to still be able to service the community and be able to do what we want. But I can tell you that I will guarantee, Jim knows, I'm out there all the time, and I can guarantee you that there will not be a parking issue.
Are you encouraging the leagues to play that
Cornhole.
cornhole and that kind of thing?
That's during the summer.
Okay, but with the tent covering it,
If we did it with the tent, we can't, the way that we discussed it, we can't include all 4 boards anyway. We have 5 boards now. We would only be able to do a couple of boards to be able to do it. We were debating whether we're still going to do that, because if we only have 2 or 3 boards, we're not sure whether it's worth it to do the additional tent. But it's not, wouldn't be the same kind of thing as we did during the summer.
Could you incorporate it into the larger tent if you wanted to?
No, we don't have the room to do a larger tent there, other than
No,
what
no, I'm
we're
just saying,
proposing.
you're proposing 2 tents right now.
Correct, the large one and then the
Could you
small.
incorporate the cornhole process for what you want into the larger tent?
No.
Okay.
The way that, at least the way Jacob, who is the owner of
Yep.
Hank Parker, the way he described it to me and the angles that it would have to go around, we couldn't. So it would not be a possibility unless Craig, because Craig came out and looked at our setup.
No, it wouldn't really make any sense.
Craig, how quickly can those tents get up?
A day.
One day?
Yeah.
Okay.
He showed me exactly, he showed Jeff and I exactly how they do it, and I think it was 6 hours, I think, when you were talking to me
Yeah,
about it.
we go, days generous, but they're
Okay.
they're quick by hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate all the extra work that's gone in, either by staff, and I know you probably felt you were going through the ringer, but we certainly want to be successful if we are going to approve something.
Oh, I appreciate it. And like I said, the reason we're doing the tent issue this way more than the other is because of the safety of the patrons.
Right, the snow.
That is the only reason we're looking to do this than a normal canvas side and the whole thing.
And I think there's a possibility, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, if we have a resolution that has within it a condition for the parking, that condition upon, safe parking or something along those lines. Have we done that before?
Oh, absolutely. One of the problems that we're running into, and I know you're trying to resolve that, we talked about this as well, about the fact that people have been parking in our driveway to our pump station. The worst scenario for everybody, especially you, would be if we couldn't get access to that pump station if it went down.
I actually caught 2 people down there today, and I went down personally and asked them to move it. One guy was with a boat, and I told them both they had to move.
Yeah, very good.
So
So-
I'm trying.
Yeah.
We certainly could, but again, remember, this is...
Right, I was just going to say, this
This
is,
is a discussion as to
to
whether or
move
not
forward for
they
a
should move
public
forward
hearing.
for a public
Right,
hearing.
right.
So if you're comfortable with that, we could set a
Yes.
public hearing.
Yes.
If you're not comfortable with it, then we would not do that. That was the whole premise of bringing them in.
Yep, absolutely.
And they understand that.
For
they know.
for the public hearing, would you have a sense, maybe it's more of on the fire marshal and code enforcement, of if you had the tent, what capacity could be for both the
Yes,
existing structure, the
absolutely.
tent structure?
Absolutely.
Because another, if I'm remembering correctly, parking is predicated on capacity, correct?
Correct.
So when we talk about parking resolutions and more parking, we can speak arbitrarily, but there is an actual code.
formula.
And I think that it's important for everyone to understand what you may need. I mean, if you need parking that far exceeds what even you're negotiating now, that may point you in a different direction.
Right,
And I
and-
just don't know what that number is right now, and I don't,
Yeah, we're still talking though about just enclosing the outdoors that have been in use
That's
already
right.
with people.
But again, what it does is it effectively creates a secondary
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it-
site for them to be
yeah.
able to utilize all winter long, so people may come, they may not, depending on the
Yeah.
situation. It is kind of awkward for you, because you do have the fire pits and everything in there, so it's not like it's just this open area. You kind of got to walk around and kind of dodge these areas. But we would
Tables.
certainly sit down, as you suggested, with the fire marshal,
Yeah.
and you've given us the dimensions of the tent, so we understand what the capacities would be for that.
Just to get an
And again,
idea.
the big issue for staff really isn't that. It's if we do create a secondary place for the winter months, you do need parking to accommodate
Yeah.
it.
I'm okay moving ahead with the public hearing, and I would strongly encourage the applicant to pursue a permanent solution sooner versus later. I'm sure you would like to do that too.
We all agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Knowing that no final decision is made at tonight's
Right.
board meeting, other than just going to a public
Right.
hearing.
Okay, I
So-
second going ahead with the public hearing.
Before we move forward, your anniversary is going to be coming up in the first part of December, right?
December 7th. Our actual anniversary is the 2nd, but they didn't want to do it earlier, so they chose December 7th as being our anniversary.
What are you kind of anticipating in terms of people coming to that site during that period of time?
Last year,
had a tent.
we didn't have,
You had a tent.
yeah, we had a
I
tent,
was there.
but we did not have near the number of people that we
Thought you would
had
have.
thought we would. You know, it's not like the grand opening, so. Throughout the day, we probably had maybe, I would say, a total of 200 in and out, but it was never, we really never had, we had more during the summer at different times
Yeah.
than, you know, on a Saturday in and out throughout the day than we did on our actual anniversary. Like I said, in the wintertime, people really, I hate to say it, they just don't come out as much.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry.
just
I kind
don't.
of interrupted your process.
All right, I move that we move forward with just the public hearing at this point.
Okay, so, seconded by Linda. Okay, further discussion from the board? Questions from the applicant?
I have one last
Sure.
question. My only concern, and Craig can speak to this, I just want to make sure that if it's approved, we have time to get it up before Rochester drops its snow. So I'm not sure what the time frame of the process is, but if we were to be approved, we would like to still get the structure up. I don't know, what is your time frame
You
usually?
may have to do what you were suggesting earlier. I don't think you've had the tent up this year yet, have you?
No, we,
So you have the ability to get your special permit for that 3-week period. You know, and obviously you want to make it so that it's kind of in the middle of where your anniversary is. But it'll give the board time to set the public hearing, because it's going to be a while because of the holiday season coming up now.
You might
we're not
use
going to be
the-
able to get it in
Could
November?
you, probably not. We could set a meeting,
You could.
but it will probably
so
be
our
in
next-
December.
Yeah, so let's just talk about kind of next steps. The next opportunity this board would have a resolution to set a public hearing is going to be the 6th of November, which means you cannot hear it until probably the first week in December.
By law, yeah.
And we have to advertise by law. I mean, under the ordinance, we have to advertise by law. So we have to go through and do that. So there is a fifth Wednesday of this month. So next week is the 30th. There is no board meetings. Nothing is scheduled. So it would be the 6th, setting a public hearing for probably the 4th of December.
So that might be to your advantage, though, because if you do put the tent up prior to under your special permit process, and I know you follow all the procedures to do that, it gives the board an opportunity to see what's really happening during that period of time, especially if you're going to have the anniversary right around the time of the public hearing. And then after the public hearing, they'll have a meeting just like this at the work session the following week, so we'll have a good feeling for what's going on. If everything goes according to the way you proposed it, then the board is more inclined to be able to approve it. If it doesn't, I mean, if we have some real problems during that period of time, it's also going to be an indicator as to how to deal with some of the issues that might pop up.
Right.
So it might be good for you to be able to do that for the anniversary party. And you've got 3 weeks to work with because you've not used any this year yet, so.
Right. My only concern is, can it still go up during that time frame?
It's, yeah, the sooner the better for us, just,
Well, you want to make sure it falls within the time frame of the anniversary party.
This structure, you just said there's no way to have it up before our anniversary party.
No, you could through your special permit process.
And have it up for the 3 weeks, and,
Yes.
but would the approval be done by,
No, but I mean, we'll work with you to get that
Separate
taken care
tracks.
of.
You can still move forward with your 3 weeks, and that will sort of,
Yeah, but I think the point is there's probably two different tents. There's the tent for the celebration, and then there's the winter tent. Am I,
oh, it's not
Or
the
the
same.
same time.
it can be the same thing. My only concern is if I'm not approved, or we're not approved by the time the 3 weeks are up,
Right.
then it would have to come down, and then it's going to have to go back
No,
up.
because what'll happen is, I mean, if we move it to January or something of that nature, I mean, you could still use one of your permits from next year. But I think the board's gonna try and get it resolved for you.
There's a way
I mean, if
to
you're
work
over
through
a couple
that.
days here or there,
Yeah.
we're not gonna,
That-
not
Okay,
making you
thank
take
you.
it.
That was the only
The
concern.
tops, you know, what if we skin the tops, or if there was an issue, would that still, you still need to approve?
No, I
or-
just set the tent up the way you normally would to make it safe and functional
Okay.
and habitable. The board will do what it has to do in the time frame that it has to do it in to do what it needs to do, so.
Okay, thank you.
So,
And if you get a chance to come out and look at it while it's up, we'll be putting it up just before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
and for the 3-week time frame, so that we have it up the week before the anniversary party and then the
Right.
week of it.
And
And
then the board will have its meeting on the 4th of December, and then have its work session the following week.
Yeah,
Sixth.
so what Jim is
6th of
saying
November.
is just a matter of timing.
That's all
I
it
think we
is.
can.
so should I have anybody from Hank Parker's there for the public meeting, or do you think it's more with
It
K2
would be
than?
good to have Greg come to the
think so.
meeting, just in case something comes up that nobody knows the answer to. I think by that point in time,
Greg's
we'll.
sitting around getting in trouble.
He would
at
love to
home
come to a
anyway,
town
so
board
just
meeting.
love to come to one of these stimulating public
Hasn't been
events
abused
that
enough
the
yet.
town hosts.
I can go back and watch this on video later.
You did a
Agree to
great
what?
job.
And that
riveting.
seals the deal, then you should be here on the
I'll be
4th.
here.
Okay, so, it's been moved and seconded, moving to public hearing. Mr. Costello will have a resolution in for
Come and see me.
the 6th of November, calling for a public hearing on December 4th. And then we'll see at least the two of you, if not others, at the public hearing.
We'll put our application in for the temporary permit.
Very good. All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, this brings us to item C, RFP for Shadow Pines Conceptual Master Plan. We did have a brief discussion. We didn't have all the board members present on the 2nd of October. And so since then, the board has had an opportunity to get together, take a look, prepare a matrix, and with that, would open up discussion. I would first ask Mr. Costello, has there been anything new, different that has been submitted since the October 2nd
No.
meeting? Okay. So the board has all the proposals that came in and would entertain any discussion, thoughts, comments, questions, or otherwise.
I'd just like to point out, Mr. Supervisor, that, it looks like we had some very competent engineering firms come forward to be a part of putting together master plan. I think that's a good thing, shows that, these local firms all have have an interest in participating in the future of what the Shadow Pines parcel will look like. And so, I read the proposals, and I know the other board members did in talking with some of the staff, and each one, had its own merits and good. The price difference, what I'm looking at, there was a considerable variation in prices depending on the proposals. I think some embraced kind of the concept of what we were looking for the engineering firm to do for the property itself. And I just want to point out too, for the record, that you and I, the Supervisor LaFountain and I, were involved in the Shadow Pines Land Use Advisory Committee, and a part of their final recommendation on page 21, it does recommend that the town go and engage professional services to guide the planning and implementation for the best use of this property. So that's just one of the reasons why we're here talking about it today. Not only do I think it's the right thing to do to get someone to take a look at that, but also the Shadow Pines Land Use Advisory Committee, comprised of 12 residents, thought it was the right thing to do too. So I appreciate the town's efforts in putting together the RFP, and appreciate the competent firms coming forward with proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I think, as Andy had mentioned, there is a variation in the pricing, and so having sort of read through the proposals, I think that for what the Land Use Committee had envisioned and put forth in their report, and sort of what was in the summaries for the various proposals based on price, I would propose that we move forward with BME based on, again, the information, looking at the concept, sort of the overview of what is sort of being asked by the RFP and asked by the advisory committee, and again at the price point for an all-in cost. So that would be my recommendation. based on the information that we have here tonight.
I think as I reviewed the proposal, certainly price has to be a factor when we're looking at any RFP, but I also wanted to look at the firms that had really a lot of internal support across the board, architecture, engineering, because we don't know, what the final plan is going to look like. We certainly have a great deal of recommendations from the committee that we need to be true to, and I think we want to have certainly engage a firm that's the most flexible in that regard, not only with experience, but also just with moving forward in a creative fashion to get it right the first time.
Yeah, I think they were good proposals, but when it comes down to it, the master plan isn't a comprehensive master plan in the line of what we're doing right now for the town. It's a small master plan for the property. We look at the topography, what's doable on the land, and a couple of the proposals were so high in price, it's beyond what we're looking at for the scope. And I think the BME falls in good line. It's not the lowest, but it's you get a lot for that amount of money, and in a time frame that's suitable for what we're looking at, and it addresses the what we're looking at for that area. So I would concur. I would second going with BME.
So you're offering that as a motion?
I would make a motion, yes.
Okay, and Linda, you're seconding?
Sure.
So the proposal would be to accept the RFP, the information submitted by BME at a cost of $12,500 to prepare a plan. And again, when we discussed on the 2nd of October, we had talked about shifting the timeline, because we had to shift the timeline for a couple of weeks for this, that we would shift the timeline for when we're expected to have the master plan, the concept master plan in-house, and so that has been or will be adjusted as well. Okay, seeing no further discussion, those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Costello, you put a resolution together for the town board meeting on the 6th of November, and award the contract for that.
And Mr. Supervisor,
Yes,
can I just point out too,
absolutely.
for the record, that a part of the master plan moving forward will include public participation.
That is
I think
correct.
that's important to make sure that the community recognizes that that's a part of what we'll be doing.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item D. This is 74 Bentbrook Circle, a hold harmless agreement request. And Mr. Costello,
Yes, the town engineer was awaiting some information regarding some photographs and the instrument survey identifying the placement of this fence. It's within the easement. I talked to the property owners this evening. They have not been able to get that information together for us in a timely fashion. They requested that they be able to come back at a later date to work this out with the board.
okay, so, and then just very briefly, the whole harmless agreement was for a shed, a fence?
It was for, actually what occurred here was a new pool was installed on the property that needed fencing.
Okay.
The applicant, or the applicants for the pool permit installed fencing within one of our drainage easements, and we need to make sure that if something happens, they have to take that out of their cost.
Understand. Okay. All right, then that'll be, we'll come back to the board at a later date. All right, seeing no further business to come before the board this evening, the October 23rd, 2019 Town Board Work Session stands adjourned at 8:26 p.m. Thank you for everyone that participated. Thank you to Penfield TV.
Thank you.